Let's get into Friday feedback for the week. You can email info@davidpakman.com. Love to hear from folks. A lot of different topics represented today, including one that I want to focus in on a little bit. I'll just remind you, not only can you email info@davidpakman.com, sometimes we will feature YouTube comments or Twitter replies or TikTok comments. The point here being, number one, many ways to participate. And number two, if you're acting like a fool on any of these platforms in reaction to our content, it may end up in the Friday feed bag. We start today with F. Salazar, who says, as a Republican, not of the MAGA cult, if my vote can't go toward Nikki, then we'll give it to Biden. No way I will waste my vote on Trump again. Worthless. Again, we welcome this. Oh, but they don't agree with us on abortion. Okay. If they agree with us on attempting to preserve democracy by not giving Donald Trump a vote, we say we have many disagreements, but we agree Trump shouldn't be president. Biden's a better option. Let's vote to make it a reality. We're not going to name and shame. Now, I know that, I've had conversations with Andrew Yang, for example, where when he launched this Forward Party, which I think is going nowhere, when he launched the Forward Party and he talked about a coalition of left and right or something like that. And I asked him, well, what about white supremacists? Do you welcome them? And he said, yeah, I think I would if they agree with ranked choice voting and whatever. And he was criticized for it. It's important that there are two different things. On the one hand, there is, are we looking to build a coalition that includes white supremacists? Obviously not, especially myself being Jewish. A separate question is, when we know what the two choices are and we know which is best, do we turn away anyone who recognizes one is better than the other? No. And so it's different than I'd like to create a movement where white supremacists are welcome versus you probably believe some wacky things, but if you're going to help us defeat Trump and make Biden president, I'm not checking voter ID at the door or asking you what your other views are. You should vote the right way and you should be welcome to do it. So we want to make sure that we are allowing those former Trump voters to feel welcome and willing to jump and go over to Joe Biden. Etherti Morasha, I don't know how to pronounce this, says, my lifelong Republican 72-year-old father was impressed by Joe's State of the Union. For the first time in the 28 years since turning 18, my vote may not have to cancel his. That's an amazing thing. That is to be celebrated. And it is a really, really good thing to see. Other messages regarding the 2024 election. D-Win DC says, I voted for Haley in the primary and will vote Biden in November. Joe Biden is a good man that I happen to have some policy and ideological differences with. However, because Donald Trump has proven to be an unhinged threat to national security, I am willing to put some of the policy issues that I am concerned about aside and vote for Biden in order to preserve democracy and the Constitution. Once we secure the country and we make sure Donald Trump is kept as far away from the White House as possible, then we can go back to having conversations around policy and elect candidates accordingly. Yeah, I had a conversation with some of my Republican friends recently who are all anti-Trump. And they say, Biden's fine. It's not perfect, but Biden's fine. We'd like lower taxes. I say to them, it would be great to get back to nobody's destroying or wanting to destroy democracy. And we can disagree as to what the tax rates should be. That is a far simpler time, and it is far less precarious when it comes to saving and maintaining the basic institutions of our democracy. We did a poll on the David Pakman Show YouTube channel. The question was, what is your top policy priority in 2024? 150,000 of you voted. This is nuts. 148,000 of you voted. 2/3 say the most important policy priority this election is preserving democracy. followed by 14% said the economy, 8% healthcare, 8% immigration, and 4% foreign policy. This is a good sign overall, although in this particular case, it only represents those who chose to vote in our YouTube poll, not scientific, not weighted and adjusted for populations or anything like that. But it is interesting nonetheless. And I think it does reinforces that the degree to which Biden may suffer based on people who don't like what he's doing in Gaza, where it's like he's not really doing anything, but that's another story. I think that's a very, very small portion of the electorate. It's Me says, why does the Republican National Committee need to pay the legal fees of a self-declared multi-billionaire alleged criminal? Well, they don't need to, they want to. It's that simple. Trump has executed a takeover of the Republican National Committee. They got Ronna McDaniel out. They are now ready, I guess you would say, to become fully Trumpian, as if they weren't almost fully Trumpian before. And so it's not that they need to pay Trump's legal fees. It's that they want to pay Trump's legal fees because Trump is putting people who are hardcore Trumpists in charge of the RNC. It's pathetic what has happened to the Republican Party. You know, I'm not one of these guys who romanticizes the Republican Party of 20 years ago. George W. Bush was horrifying. But there was a time where, at least on some of these around the edges, like, are we going to let the RNC become totally subjugated by one guy who, by the way, has been terrible for us electorally? You weren't seeing that 20 years ago. You were seeing lots of other horrible things, but you weren't seeing that. Anthony says, I like David Pakman, but he is off on this one. The cost of living is horrible, and it simply wasn't that way when Trump was in office. Here's the really important thing to understand. When we say inflation is down, we're not saying there is deflation. When we say the deficit is down, we're not saying the debt is declining. We're saying it's growing at a slower pace. Imagine that I say to you about a kid, he's growing in height more slowly now. You wouldn't expect that kid to be shorter next year. You would expect that kid to have grown less in the next year than in the last. And so in some literal sense, we haven't had deflation here. So when we say inflation came down from 8 to 3, things aren't getting cheaper. They're getting more expensive at a slower rate. That's the reality of what we say when we talk about inflation. It's not deflation, which is bad for the economy for other reasons. The good news is that inflation now is very close to the ideal margin of 2 to 3%, somewhere in that margin. And number two, we have now had periods where wage growth has outpaced inflation. Fox News is now pretending that's bad. But, I haven't said things are cheaper now. I've said prices are increasing more slowly. Doug Vanisdahl wrote in and said to me, you look too young to really understand what you were talking about. So please go and do some real research. You might, M-I-T-E, oh boy, just change your mind. You might just change your mind. Myself, I was glad Trump did not start any wars, W-A-R''S. Oh boy. He had world leaders respecting the USA. We, the citizens of this great country, was doing well. I'm not going to comment on the grammar. I don't know why when we get these Trumpy emails from people who seemingly speak only English, it's such a disaster grammatically. I do not know. I don't want to stereotype or anything like that. What I can tell you is I've done plenty of research. Looking at the Trump record hasn't changed my mind into thinking it was some miracle. The Trump didn't start wars is really neither here nor there, in the sense that Trump did plenty of bombing. Trump did nothing about Russia's occupations in Ukraine, We have the list. It's not the big win that you think it is when you say that. World leaders did not respect the United States as per the Gallup surveys. And there was a time where the economy was doing fine, and then a time when it wasn't, is I think the way that I would put it. And the more I study the record, the more I am actually thinking this is the accurate perspective. Lady Gaga 93 says, Haley supporter here who will vote for Joe Biden. Was a Republican my whole life until the MAGA wing became anti-Ukraine, anti-Western democracy, and anti-NATO. I am now an independent. Yeah, many of the Republicans prominently, Mitt Romney and others, that are not supporting Trump, it's not that they aren't conservative anymore. They're still conservative on abortion. They're still conservative on taxes, whatever. It's that they see Trump as a fundamental threat to the institutions of democracy, and they see Trump's willingness to abandon strategic and historical allies, and sometimes even to laugh in their faces, as a bad thing. And on that, I agree with them. I don't agree with them on taxes, on abortion, on a whole host of other issues. But on the importance of preserving alliances, respecting the agreements we enter into ourselves, and sticking to our commitments, I do agree that those things are important. Trump doesn't, MAGA doesn't, and I think that it is a growing trend that we hear from folks like this. It's a good thing. You can email info@davidpakman.com if you have anything you'd like to say. We have a great bonus show for you today. We are off during the weekend. Just a reminder, I'm not avoiding a story on Sunday. We just don't do shows 7 days a week, like just about every other show. I know a lot of people are angry about this. And we will be back on Monday. I look forward to seeing you then. But the bonus show is going to be coming up long before that.